He mentioned وَالْغَلَبَةُ فِي مُخَالَطَةِ الْجَامِدَاتِ. So number one, he mentioned about al-jamidat. Al-jamidat are basically the things that are solid. Things that are solid, that do not mix with water. So he began by speaking about as to whether this thing that is placed in water, is it a form of solid, or is it a form of a substance that can be mixed with water. So we have this term in fiqh, and we call it the jamidat and the ma'i'at. So jamidat are solid things, like wood. And for example, he gave some examples, and later on, we will see. So there is a difference between putting something that is solid in water and putting something that dissolves in water. So there is a difference between putting al-jamid like wood in water and putting sugar. Sugar dissolved in water. So sugar is a form of ma'i'at, whereas wood is a form of jamidat. So he began by speaking about if the thing that is placed in water is a form of a solid, jamid. Then he mentioned بِإِخْرَاجِ الْمَاءِ عَنْ رِقَّتِهِ وَسَيَلَانِهِ. If we were to place something that is solid in water, and it changes the state of water to such an extent in terms of its composition that it differs with normal water when it comes to its sayalan. Sayalan is the flowing. You see, the density of water differs. If you were to put something into water can become dense due to other substances that are mixed with it. So if it changes the characteristics of the water, in the sense that it loses its properties and its characteristics as normal water in terms of its lightness and non-density, if it changes in that state, then that water cannot be used for ablution. But if it doesn't change the density of the water and the thickness of the water in such an extent that the water is still flowing normally as mutlaq water is, then it is still considered to be pure and can purify. So here the Hanafites and scholars speaks about riqa and sayalan in terms of its thinness and in terms of its flowing. So if the substance is added into water that doesn't change these properties of the thickness and also the flowing of the water, then it does not remove the ability of this water for ablution. We can still perform ablution and this water. So it shows that nothing much of the water has changed, because the density of the water is not affected by the solid that has placed in the water. طيب. And then he mentioned وَلَا يَدُورُ تَغَيُّرُ أَوْصَافِهِ كُلِّهَا بِجَامِدٍ. When it comes to the properties of water in terms of awsaf, it goes back into the color, it goes back into the taste, it goes back into the smell. So the author mentioned when it comes to the changes in terms of these three properties of water, by adding in a solid in the water, it doesn't affect the water, meaning we can still use the water for ablution. We can still use the water for ablution. So here we make a differentiation between putting a solid in water that changes the state of the water in terms of its flow, that it becomes more dense, and putting a solid in water that changes one of the properties of the water, but this is a solid. So if it is a solid, even it change any of the properties of the water, it is still considered to be pure and can purify. When do we say that this water cannot be used for ablution? When it changes the density of the water in terms of the flowing and the riqa. That's what we mentioned. These two things, riqa and sayalan, the thickness of the water and the flow of the water. So let me give you an example. You see, when we speak about water, when you pour any water, there is there is this the thickness of the water. It can be understood. But the moment for example, you mix with sugar, for example, or you mix with something that make the water, for example, a bit of solidify, for example. So in a sense that when you pour the water, now the water pours slowly. now this kind of water cannot be used any as ablution, even though if the thing that is placed in water is a solid and not any from the liquid, not from the ma'iat, but it is from the jamidat. But when it comes to the properties, the three properties in terms of the smell, in terms of the taste, and in terms of the color, it doesn't any matter if one of it and is change the property of the water, if the thing that is placed in the water is a solid. So this is where the author is saying wala yaduru tarayyuru awsafihi kulliha, the three properties, bijamidin, with a solid, and then he gave an example kaza'faran. So now we have the leaves of saffron. Saffron is known. So now I take any saffron and I put any in water. So we ask this question: any saffron, is it solid or liquid? Solid. It is a solid. So if you to put any saffron in water, and it changes the color of the water, for example, normally saffron will change the color of the water. But if it is just a little of saffron, where although it changes the color of the water, but it does not change the state and the density of the water. So it is permissible for us to use in ablution. Wa fakihatin, likewise putting a fruit inside. What? A fruit is a type of a solid substance. So when we put a fruit in water, surely water has effect with the food. But since it is a solid, it does not make the water unsuitable for ablution just by placing the solid into water. And even any of the properties change, it does not make the water unsuitable for ablution, unless if the change is drastic. It changes drastic to an extent it changes the density of the water, as what we mentioned. Likewise, wawaraki shajar, the leaves of the trees that fall into water, it does not make the water unsuitable for ablution, even though it changes the properties of the water, but the change is a slight change. So the thing here that we can understand is that if a solid is placed in water, if there is a slight change, it is forgiven. It is still considered to be mutlaq. It is still considered to be mutlaq, unless if the change affect the density of the water and the flowing of the water and the thickness of the thickness of the water. Because now we say now this is a drastic. This is a drastic change. طيب. So this is the concept of ghalaba, as what the author is saying. So he's giving us a principle. How do we ascertain that the changes that occur in water, whether it is suitable for ablution, not suitable for ablution? So he began by speaking about jamid, that's what we mentioned, the solid. Now the second thing, he speaks about the ma'i, the liquid substances that are mixed with water. So it carries a different ruling. So number one, I believe is understood. Then number two, he mentioned wal ghalabatu fi mukhalatatil ma'i'at. Al-ghalaba, this overwhelmingness that changes the states of the water by the mixing of al-ma'i'at, liquid substances. So for example, sugar, salt, water, and so on and so forth. So number one, he mentioned bizuhuri wasfin wahidin min ma'in lahu wasfani faqat. So when it is something that is a liquid and it possesses two characteristics or two properties, kallaban, like milk. So he said milk, he has two properties. What are two properties that milk has? Color, whitish in color. Number two is the taste. It does not have any smell. So this is an example. You have any milk that has no smell. It only has color and taste. So this is an example if two of the three properties are present. If two of the two properties are present, then we say that this particular milk is not suitable for us to make any ablution. Why? Because it suffices us even one of the properties is present. Even though one of the properties is present, like the property of color, it suffices for us to ascertain that this liquid cannot be used for ablution. So this is what the author is saying. Bizuhuri wasfin wahidin. Only one property is present from something that has two properties. Like milk, it has two properties. That is the property of color and the property of taste. So if only one property is present, it is enough for us to say that it is not suitable for us to use this liquid for ablution. So for things that has two properties, it suffices if one of the properties is present. So if you have milk, for example, color and taste, now we cannot use it for ablution. So number 2, bizuhuri wasfaini min ma'in lahu awsafun salasa. But what if a liquid has three properties, like vinegar? Vinegar has color, has taste, and has smell. Three properties. So he said that if two of the properties are present, color and taste, it suffices us that this cannot be used as a form of ablution. Now, two of the properties are present in something that possess three properties. Then the next one he mentioned, وَالْغَلَبَةُ فِي الْمَاءِ الَّذِي لَا وَصْفَ لَهُ. So now he break this up into a few parts. Number 1, we mentioned a liquid that has two properties, like milk. Number 2, a liquid that has three properties, like vinegar. Number 3, a liquid that has no properties. No properties. Now, just like what? Ma al-musta'mal. Last week we spoke about musta'mal. When we take any ablution and we collect the water from ablution, this is used water. So used water in terms of the properties, it does not change. In terms of the taste, in terms of the color, in terms of the smell. But it is something that we cannot use it for ablution, because it is musta'mal. It is water that is used. So there are certain types of water that even though the properties are not present, in terms of the color, in terms of the taste, in terms of the smell, we cannot use it for ablution. So this is an example he gave, ma'ul musta'mal. The second example he gave, ma al-ward, al-munqati'u ra'iha, rose water that has no smell. Now you have rose water, pure rose water, and has no smell. And it takes the color water, it doesn't have any smell, and it doesn't have any taste. It doesn't have any taste. So now when he mentioned takunu bil wazn, we have to take into consideration the amount. How large is the amount of this water? If it is 100% rose water, of course we cannot use it for ablution, just like any water that is musta'mal. But here the author mentioned, what about if something like the rose water or ma'al musta'mal that is mixed with ma'al mutlaq? If it is mixed with ma'al mutlaq, how can we ascertain that this water now can be used for ablution or not ablution? So he said takunu bil wazn. If we look at the density and also the amount, how much of this water and how much of the mutlaq. So he gave this example, فَإِنِ اخْتَلَطَ رَطْلَانِ مِنَ الْمَاءِ الْمُسْتَعْمَلِ. So you have two rattle is form of measurement. So for example, we say 2 volumes. 2 volumes of water with one of used water with 1 volume of mutlaq water, pure water. So you have 2:1, ratio 2:1. 2:1. La yajuzu bihil wudu. It is not permissible for us to take ablution with water that is overwhelmed by used water. So now when we mix it, used water is more than the pure water. Now this confirm we cannot use it for ablution. Khalas. Why? Because the ratio of the used water is more than the pure water. So this is the first situation. But then he mentioned wabi'aksihi jaz. But if the opposite is permissible, opposite the permissible meaning one. Just already we mentioned ratio 2:1, used water and pure water. 2 used water, 1 pure water, not permissible because used water is more than pure water. But what about 2 pure water and 1 used water? 2 volumes of pure water, mutlaq, with 1 volume of musta'mal, we mix. Then we can use it for ablution. Why? Because in terms of the quantity, the pure water is more than the used water. Now, So this is the second thing. The third thing. The fourth thing, and he mentioned warabi' ma'un najis. Ma'un najis. Yani water any that is mixed any with impurities. Wa huwa alladhi halat fihi najasa. Yani it is water any that is mixed any with the impurities, that is the najis. Then he mentioned wa kana rakidan qalila. And this water that is mutanajis, that is mixed any with najis, it is qalil. It is qalil rakid. Yani it is something any that does not flow. And it is a little any in amount. So here any we have any the differences any between the madhab al-Imam Shafi and the madhab Imam Hanafi with regards any to what is the meaning any of little any in water. Because any we have the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِذَا بَلَغَ الْمَاءُ قُلَّتَيْن لَمْ يَحْمِلِ الْخَبَثِ. If water any reaches any qullatain, yani it does not any bring about najas. It is not any mutanajis, because any water any has the power any to repel impurities and if it is a lot. So what is the boundary of a lot here, and what is little when it comes any to water? So these are based any on the ijtihad. In the Hanafi any madhab any of course any there are differences, but the opinion any that is what you call it that is taken as mentioned any by the author of Al-Lubab is ashara bi ashara, yani 10 arms length by 10 arms length. I mean if it is a square, 10 arms length, 1 arms length and is about 42 any point 46.2 centimeters. 1 arms length zira and is about 42 yani 0.6 any centimeters. So 42 times 6 you times 10. So this is the length. And then 42 times 6 same distance the width. So the length of the width, this is with regard any to a square. The length any of the width any is 10 arms length. How much any is 10 arms length? So 1 arms length any is about 46 any 0.2 centimeter. This is mentioned by Dr. Ibrahim al-Silkini, any one of the scholar any in the contemporary any scholar in the Hanafi madhab, because centimeters any during the time of the Prophet sallallahu any is not used. Not today any we use any centimeters and meters. So it is about any 46 any 0.2 any 1 zira, yani 1 arm's length. So it's ashara bi ashara. So 10 any zira yani 46 any 0.2 any times 10. You get any about 462. 462 any centimeters. So it's about 4.62 meters. 4.62 meters. No. So we times 462 any centimeter with 462 centimeter. 462 any centimeter we times 462 centimeter. So this is the measurement any for the qullatain. And then when comes any to the depth, there are differences, whether it is 1 arm's length or the size any of about 5 any centimeters, because the Hanafi scholars any mentioned when a person is able any to take any the water without any the water touching any the base, so it is about any 5 centimeter. So from there any we can times. We times any 46 any 0.2 centimeters times 46.2, and then any we times 5. Then any we times any 5. That is any the quantity any of qullatain. So now any if it is anything lesser than that, they said wa kana rakidan qalilan wal qalil ma duna ashrin fi ashrin. This is what any he meant. Ma duna ashrin bi ashrin. There is any ta'liq here. Hada qawlu Muhammad, any Muhammad al-Shaybani, one of the students any of al-Imam Abu Hanifa, wa huwa ma rajjahu al-mutaakhirun. The later scholars in the Hanafi madhab do tastarjih to this opinion. 10 by 10, 10 bi 10, 10 zira, 10 zira. Tawsi'atan ala an-nas, and to make it easy any for people. La siyama al-awam, he mentioned, wa amma fi zahir riwayah, but in the book any of zahir riwayah, and these are one of the books any that are used any as what you call it reference and in the madhab also. Fal mu'tabar fihi akbar ra'i mutallan. Then this is mentioned any by the author any of Al-Lubab. There are some differences any when comes any to this. Wal murad bi ashar any he say ay asharatu dhira. 10 any arm's length. Then he gave any what you call it, this some, what do you call it, calculation here. So 46 any 0.2 any as what we mentioned. So 46 any time 0.2 any times 10. So you get 462 centimeter. And then that is also any that is has the breadth. And then 5 centimeter yani is the umq al hawd. So we get any about, this is any the amount, yani 106,720 what you call it, this centimeters muka'ab, yani in terms any of the masaha, yani this is any in terms any of the yani of the space of the space. So this is any what is meant any by two qullatain. Anything that is less any than this any is considered any to be any a little. Then any he mentioned fayanjusu biha wa illam yadhhar atharuha fi. So any if a najis any falls any into water that is a little rocket and it is not any flowing, because flowing any has its own any ruling, then it becomes mutanajis. It becomes any mutanajis, even though we cannot see the effect any in the change any of the properties, because since any it is water that is a little najis and it comes in, and this is the same in madhab Shafi'i. But when we differ any in terms any of the kullatain, but when comes any to little water, it becomes any mutanajis, even though yani najis and it fell into it, even though it didn't change the properties of the water. أو كان جاريا وظهر فيه أثرها, water any that is flowing and we can see the change yani in the state any of the water, then it is also any mutanajis. Wal athar, the thing any that change any he mentioned ta'am aw launin aw rih, either one, whether it is in terms of the taste, in terms any of the color, in terms any of the smell, so it becomes any mutanajis any if these properties are there when it comes to flowing water. Wal khamis ma mashkukun fi tahuriyatihi. The fifth one yani is mashkuk yani meaning there is doubt yani in terms any of his purity. It's better any for us any to avoid. Wa huwa ma shariba minhu himar aw baghl. Ma shariba minhu himar aw baghl, yani donkey any drinks any from this water, and donkey any is a type any of animal any that we can eat, we cannot eat the flesh. Likewise any when comes any to baghl any is what you call it, is an animal any that is a mixed breed, mixed between donkey and horse. So in the Hanafi madhab, it depends any on the mother. If the mother any is pure, for example, the mother is a horse, father any is a donkey, then it is pure. It is considered, it takes any the ruling any of the mother, which is a pure animal. But if the mother any is a donkey and the father any is a horse, now any it takes any the ruling any of takes any the ruling any of the mother. So it becomes what you call it, the water yani is not any suitable for us any to use any for ablution. Wallahu a'lam. So by this any we have completed any this fasal. Inshallah in our next lesson any we will speak any about fi bayani ahkami su'ur. Su'ur any is the water that is balanced any after the drinking, after we drink any water, the balance any is called su'ur, and the plural is asar. So the author yani will speak any about some rulings any with regard any to this type any of water. Wallahu a'lam any bisawab. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.